Hello everyone, welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Friday, June 30th, 2023. I'm Simon Rafe, here with my two co-hosts, Carl Copey and Nick Wiley. Good to have you with us, gentlemen. And joining us today in the fourth chair, we used to call it the guest host, but that seemed superfluous. In the fourth chair is Trey Brock. I think this is your first time on the new Download, isn't it, Trey?
First time on the Download, and earlier this week, first time on Hardline.
Yes.
I'm getting a lot of camera time this week. So.
You are. It's fun and exciting. We like Trey. He's just come back from Italy, where he has been doing various work, helping our Rome correspondent. And, of course, Trey is also the producer of the great Mite Up show, so be sure to check that out. Now to today's subject. Bishop Richard Sticker of Knoxville, Tennessee is stepping down. The Vatican announced Tuesday Pope Francis has accepted the resignation of the Tennessee prelate. Among the reasons for his resignation is declining health, as he's had several major health scares in recent years. But another huge reason is the fact that Bishop Sticker faces allegations of mishandling abuse claims, particularly in a case of alleged homosexual rape perpetrated by a seminarian. In that case, Bishop Sticker sided with the alleged abuser and against the victim. All right, so that's Bishop Sticker, but I think we're going to talk about kind of a wider issues as well, not just him. So what do you got for me today?
Well, it all goes to the fact that we really shouldn't get, attached to any particular bishop. Sticka in the past, and we've even pointed out a couple of years ago, he even called out Biden for claiming to be Catholic, which he is. You pointed that out in a hardline, yet subverting church teaching publicly by being pro-abortion.
Yeah.
Sticka actually called him out on that, but Sticka, again, just because one bishop says one good thing, we can't run to his defense.
Yeah, I mean,
he's the greatest bishop ever.
Yeah, Sticker's quote. I've actually got Sticker's quote here, which is actually quite good. Don't understand how Mr. Biden can claim to be a good and faithful Catholic, so obviously not just a Catholic, but a good and faithful one, as he denies so much of church teaching, especially on the absolute child abuse and human rights violations of the most innocent, the not yet born. So obviously, I mean, that's actually like a really good statement, but that obviously doesn't necessarily mean that everything Bishop Sticker does is a good thing.
No, absolutely not. He's been really a mixed bag on a lot of these issues. And then when it comes out that he's covering up all this stuff in his archdiocese, letting a homosexual predator seminarian live with him, and sort of even he
was living with him
and claiming that he didn't know anything about the homosexual predation, you have to raise an eyebrow.
I knew nothing.
Yeah, they somehow never know anything, especially whenever stuff's just going on right under your own roof. You just somehow never know anything. It's like, McCarrick lived with Farrell for years. And
Farrell knew nothing, yeah.
Never knew anything about that. But yeah, so they had the seminarian, Wojciech Sławczyk, if I'm saying that right. It's hard Polish name. You never know where those letters actually go. And so
I assure you that, the Polish do.
I'm sure they do, absolutely. But so he is brought in by Cardinal Dziwisz, who Sticka has distanced himself from for obvious reasons. Dziwisz is also someone who is accused of many different things, including helping cover up for Maciel of the Legionaries of Christ and McCarrick himself being paid off by them because Dziwisz was a personal secretary of John Paul II, and so he was paid off to not spill the beans on some of those things, so it didn't come out till later. But seminarian comes and rapes a organist in the diocese, and then Sticka himself, even at one point, says it's the other way around. The organist was the predator, not the victim, and so it's kind of crazy stuff happening there that happened in Knoxville, and so very rightly so, people were outraged about it, and we covered it very extensively, and now we finally have a bishop who is resigned, even though he kind of skirts around why he had to leave.
So the Pillar actually, to their credit, they broke this story. But CM, and in particular, the yeoman's work being done by Christine Niles herself in a two-part spotlight investigation. No one did this. The Pillar broke it, but we had this extensive video investigation going over this whole story. I encourage people to click on the links on our website to watch that. What we did, our sort of novel part of this investigation is that we revealed the text messages between the subject, the abuser, the seminarian abuser that lived with Sticka, and his victim, the organist that worked for the Archdiocese. And this revealed that Sticka knew this was going on the whole time. Sticka, claims he didn't know anything about it. But Sticka, I mean, if you read these texts and you read what Sticka knew, it almost seemed like he was sort of like a matchmaker between these guys, telling them to go out and hang out, go on vacation together, go out to dinner together. Oh, hey, he likes this, you like that. Let's kind of set these guys up. Very bizarre stuff coming out in those text messages. And the fact that those text messages came forward led to local media in the Knoxville area finally reporting on this. They had remained silent about it for very, very long, and also the Vatican started to investigate it based on our reporting.
Wow, yeah, because this is obviously the issue that happens in many of these cases, where it's clear that the bishop actually, it wasn't just a question the bishop was kind of covering up or turning a blind eye. The bishop was actually sort of almost involved in these processes. I mean, I think this one where it's like, you've got him allegedly playing matchmaker, I think that's probably the worst case that I've heard, but it is, all of a piece. Because
it comes down to the fact that it's not like this was a local Tennessee kid who just happened to want to enter seminary and, he meets up with Sticka all of a sudden. This is a guy from Poland. He's from Poland, so he had to get here somehow. So this is the guy Sticka signed up on because of Jeevish, who knew a priest who was very close to his family. So Jeevish denies now knowing subject really at all, but it come out in earlier things that's not as true. He definitely knew him a little better than he wants to talk about. But so there was this gay seminarian pipeline that was going on to Orchard Lake, which is, not too far from here.
Not too far at all.
Yeah, so there was a Polish gay seminarian pipeline, and Jeevish was involved in that. And so this is another guy that he helped get over here, and Sticka took to him pretty quickly, liked him a lot. I mean, let him live with him for a couple of years. And so this is and not the only person they were living with either. There's Cardinal Justin Regali, who has vouched for Sticka time and time again. He started off as a secretary for him, and so Regali also had to resign in a not so great light either after some things came out. And so now you have these three guys who are just chumming it up, living together, living seemingly the bachelor life of. If you've seen the Christmas cards, but we don't have any of those. I wish we did. Some of the Christmas cards that every year Regali and Sticka would send out, where they're holding their dogs and smiling around the Christmas tree and all. They would send out Christmas cards to people, and so.
Wait, that's a thing. You're not doing a bit. This isn't like your Friday bit.
It's a thing.
This is an actual thing.
I posted. I think that I put one of them in headlines the other day. Whenever Sticka first resigned, I put one of the Christmas cards they had of the two of them with their dogs.
You didn't get one? You weren't a recipient?
I was not on Cardinal Regali's Christmas card list. I feel snubbed. I feel sadly snubbed. Cardinal, what did I do wrong?
And you should.
Was I not friendly enough?
I mean, if you really want to see the dogs, you can go to the basilica that has been completed in the last I think it's 4 years old. So if you look up in the dome area from above the altar, there's actually a picture of St. Francis, and next to St. Francis are Bishop Sticka's 2 dogs in the basilica.
Yikes.
The depictions of the dogs next to St. Francis are Sticka's dogs.
I'm going to give up making any kind of jokes on the download on the basis that nothing can come even close to the fact that they constructed a cathedral, and in the fresco of the dome they put the man's dog. Wow, that's crazy.
It's stranger than fiction. But I want to touch on this Regali incident for a little bit. As you mentioned, Sticka, years ago, back when he was Father Sticka, from 1994 to 2004, he served as sort of the secretary to Regali. He was working as a chancellor in the Archdiocese and the secretary to Regali. One of his responsibilities, believe it or not, was to handle sex abuse reports and sex abuse claims. So he's been doing this for years and decades. I don't know, and I would have to watch the Spotlight investigation again. I don't know if there was any mishandling of abuse cases there. I would speculate that there might be, but even if there was not, let's say Sticka was doing a great job back then handling those cases. How does he mess up on this one so bad years later?
Yeah, it's very unusual. I mean, obviously, I think we could be talking for a long while about the specifics of this case, and I think obviously while it's a very interesting case, to look at, I think it does just seem to be this perennial cavalcade of bizarreness and unusual things. This just appears to be the kind of the worst case of this sort of cover-up that I've seen. Obviously, Christine has done this excellent work there on the reporting. I think the more important thing that we need to look at, and for the audience to understand, is this lionizing of priests and bishops when they say one or two good things, and suddenly they're held up as like, oh, he's a holy priest, which we've discussed before. He's a holy priest. He's a wonderful priest. He should be the next pope. He should be bishop if he's a priest. We should get rid of this person, that person. It's like, no, everyone is just human, and they all have feet of clay. Trey, I know that you've had kind of some opinions on this sort of subject about turning men into heroes when they don't deserve it.
Yeah, well, one thing I was going to mention that Nick hit on a little bit earlier was I think all of this has a lot to do with a bigger issue of the screening process with regard to priests that I think that I can answer your question indirectly, but how do these guys get into seminary? How do these guys become priests? And that process should be, they should be vetted pretty rigorously, and I don't see how somebody who comes in, if they have same-sex attraction or if they're gay or whatever it is, how somebody lets them into seminary, because they're not giving anything up, right? The whole point of the priesthood, one of the most sacrificial parts of that priesthood, is giving up marriage and the family. If you have those inclinations, you're not giving anything up. And so these guys, they get into seminary and they haven't sacrificed anything, and they're just there for obviously other reasons. But to your point about...
I just want to, sorry Trey, I just want to stop, because I had never thought of it in that light. Obviously, I'd always, heard that you got that you shouldn't have men who are homosexual with deep-seated homosexual tendencies ordained to the priesthood, and it was all about, an authentic masculinity. But to put it within the context of the sacrifice, especially when we hear these stories of places like the NAC and elsewhere are just these hotbeds of homosexual activity, it's like, you're not giving anything up.
Yeah.
To actually hear that's I never thought of that.
That's what makes the priesthood so sacrificial in its essence, is that's the motivation, and that's the right intention for somebody going to seminary. You're saying, I'm willingly going to give this up. When you don't have that inclination, when that's not your disposition, you're going in there for the wrong reasons. And so that's why a good seminary is not going to let somebody like that in. And Nick, I know that you were in seminary for a couple of years, and you can speak to this a little bit, but that's like, I think it's a profound thing to think about, and it gives you a stronger appreciation for the priesthood, the guys that are doing it the right way.
Especially when you see homosexuality, as it was always thought of before, as a mental illness, in terms of, how can you really be a shepherd to these people when you have this disorder that you're suffering from, something that does not have to be a permanent thing. In some cases, I don't know the amount of a cross you might have to bear, whether it's something that you might not ever be able to relieve yourself of. But I mean, the studies that we've seen have shown that overwhelmingly you can. There are things that can be done that have overwhelming success with that. But yeah, to go in with this mental disorder that also brings out things like narcissism in you, that is a much more promiscuous lifestyle. And then, of course, I mean, if you really are having these attractions like that, I mean, it'd be like putting a straight man that isn't very virtuous in a place with nothing but women.
Yeah,
in a convent.
Putting him. Well, I would hope the sisters are holy, but putting him in like a girls only dorm, and he's the only guy in there.
See, and of course that is the situation, because the typical kind of story is, the Catholic priest with the altar boys, and that's the thing. And of course, we have seen that it's a lot of these, that usually they're not technically speaking children, they're adolescents, they're post-pubescent, so it is a homosexual issue. But what they are is they're always vulnerable people. That was with Cardinal McCarrick preying on the seminarians and so forth. That's why they're preying on these younger men, teenagers and so forth, because they are vulnerable and they can be groomed and they can be, persuaded, for a very sort of generous term there, and really I think the term is raped. That's essentially what is happening at this situation there. And yeah, this is the problem. And as well, another point, when you talk about this inclination is, while broadly speaking accepted within the wider world, it is not accepted within the Catholic Church. It is still an opportunity for blackmail of the priest in question. Nowadays, if somebody were to say, at a place of work, it's something like, hey, you need to, give me a promotion, or you need to give me a pay rise or something, or I'm going to tell everyone you're gay, Tarquin, the vice president at that point, is going to be like, well, I don't care everyone knowing I'm gay. It doesn't really matter because, it's everyone's cool with it these days. But within the Catholic Church, of course, that's a wholly different thing. And suddenly you've got a priest or a bishop or whomever, and people can have influence over them, which isn't a good thing.
It's also just a way to delicately say dominate someone or something.
Yes.
There's the talks of like, you want a position or you want some power, you want this or that. Well, McCarrick's going to take you to bed. And so there's that part too of like this, like a man dominating another man to show him who's boss or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's multiple layers, multiple influences and all that when it comes to that. And it's all degeneracy and it's all very much messed up and disgusting. But that's what, for whatever reason, it makes sense in their minds.
It does. Sorry,
I was just say, and why do those priests go along with it? So if you have somebody in a superior position as you from you, and they're dominating somebody, you're trying to, as you said, why does somebody go along with that? Because they want that power, they want that position, they want that supposed authority that person has above them. And so within the church, you have priests who are willing to go along with these things because they want the power that the person above them has. That's why they do it. And so again, it goes back, somebody like that, they obviously don't have the right disposition. They probably went into the church, not the church, they probably went into the seminary, went into to the priesthood with that in mind. Oh, maybe I can be a bishop one day. Maybe I can be, rather than what that vocation is all about, completely sacrificial. It's about being that holy presence, fulfilling your vocation as a priest, and that obvious distinction is confecting the sacraments. That's what you do. You distribute the sacraments to the laity, give them that nourishment to then go out into the world and carry the cross, yada, yada. But I think the point here is that weak men going into seminary are going to be vulnerable. So I don't even like calling them vulnerable because they willingly do it. They want that. They might want that power, whatever it is that they want. It's not a deepening into their vocation.
Yeah, they're being put in a situation where maybe the temptations are too great for them. Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking, Trey, about the whole, we must have the screening process, and you specifically spoke about the homosexuality. But there has been, in recent years, there's been this great emphasis on psychology being used within the seminary, and it's kind of been used almost as a weapon in many cases. You go be psychologically analyzed and stuff. I know, Trey, that you did a lot of work with Dr. Dilsaver, and he kind of has this very, I don't want to say unique, but it's a very distinct kind of take on psychology and psychiatry and so forth, with a very Catholic element to it. I was wondering if you could speak to that with regard to that use of the seminary.
Yeah, the science is called psychomoralytics, and Nick, when you were talking about mental health earlier, the beginning of mental health, and this is not just Catholic psychology, psychomoralytics, this is actually found in secular psychology as well. The beginning of mental health is living for something outside yourself. That's the mentally healthy person is one who lives for something outside himself. Psychomoralytics is simple in theory in the sense that it's just it's a study of the soul and it's the treatment of the soul, and it focuses on the natural maturation of the human person first, and then it leads to that cross of Christ crucified. It's all about grace building upon nature. So you embrace that cross of existence, you become a man, you mature, then that leads and opens up yourself to becoming that sanctified man, that holy man. So that's really the essence of it. But there's a huge focus on natural maturation. So for us men, you mature on the natural level, and that's that first step. And I guess to relate it to kind of what we're talking about here, maybe a lot of these seminarians or priests, they've maybe skipped that step, which I think is something that a lot of people might do. But so, yeah, with psychology, living for something outside yourself, and with that Catholic outlook on it, is obviously you're living for God, you're living for Christ and truth, and you don't compromise on that, and that's the sort of that's the Catholic understanding. But there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. But I think hopefully that's a decent.
Well, no, I think it is, and I think we've obviously spoken on the download before about the use of psychology and this overemphasis on psychology rather than spirituality and stuff. I know that you and Dr. Dilsaver did do the Catholic mental health program that's available on the premium channel, so people can, if they're not premium, they can obviously sign up for that, and they can, if you are premium, you can watch that there. It's on our website, and I think as well we also sell a number of Dr. Dilsaver's books in the bookstore, so that would be, in the bookshop, that would be a great place for people to start.
And in that series, there's a pretty extensive breakdown of kind of what you were hitting on earlier, the use of psychology to really kind of lead people in the wrong direction. And we break that down, how that's happened inside of Catholicism, inside of with different monasteries or different, with nuns, with priests, all of that stuff. So they use it out in the world, and they steer people in the wrong direction. But it happens inside Catholicism as well. So that's actually what drew me into the psychology stuff, is seeing how wrong all of it was going. I went to a pretty conservative college, and secular psychology was I minored in psychology, so I think I took 8 or 9 classes. But it was all secular. It was godless. It was complete. It had nothing to do with the soul. Had nothing to do with choosing the good. All that. It had nothing to do with that. It was completely secular. So, I think it's the dominant psychology of the day is completely godless.
It's godless.
The soul, away
absolutely, yeah. So, but returning to this whole idea of turning, priests into heroes when they shouldn't be. What are our thoughts on that? Because we've been here before and done it. I've said a lot about that, a lot of it privately, and I probably don't want to say the names of the priests I've mentioned publicly on. Well, I've got 5 cameras pointing at me.
You can't conflate a guy's ego too much, because at the end of the day, it's a man. It's a man. It's a woman. It's all these different things. There were some that we saw that did excel greatly, and that didn't in the end fold, like your mother Angelica's and all, who stayed faithful, who was this voice of truth and all. But when you do prop the person up to an unhealthy degree, it does become, in a sense, an idol, because you're more focused on this person than, in a lot of senses, Jesus, because it's like, oh, whatever they say has to be the right thing. I'm on this team now, and wherever that team goes, I'm going. It's like watching a sports figure. It's like, oh, what team does LeBron play for now? That's my team. Yeah. It's this like loyalty to this one entity instead of Christ overall, and that's. And a lot of times it always begins with a lack of prayer. There was always the sense that a priest doesn't pray as one who loses his priesthood and all, but it's the same thing with everyone. So you almost always see this lack of declining prayer in a person, or you in yourself, whenever you make this other person your idol, because you are called to this humility and all. But while it is, taking bold stands is good, standing up for the truth is always a good thing. You can see when people, a lot of times, when they're leaving behind humility, when that is starting to become a lacking trait and other things start to dominate. And so you have to always be orienting yourself and reminding yourself that, Jesus is the one who's in charge, and that's the voice. And if the church has said all these things for the longest time, and there are all these responsibilities that I know that I have no matter what? And am I caring to those things first? Because it's easy to be like, oh man, the church is on fire and everything's going to hell and all this different stuff. And in senses, those things have truth to them. But dude, as Simon would say, my brother in Christ.
My brother in Christ.
If you aren't going to Mass as frequently as you possibly can, because Sunday Mass is cool, but the Mass is this wellspring of grace, and you're not going to get as much of it anywhere else. If you can make it the daily Mass and you just decide not to because you're going to sit around and look at things that are going to make you mad or do all these other things, you're already struggling there. If you're not going to confession regularly, if you're not availing yourself of the sacraments, praying the Rosary, all those things, then you're totally just looking at the wrong things. Mm-hmm. You're not oriented correctly to where you can even see these things in a light that God would see them.
And I think this is why the church places so much emphasis on the conscience, on one's conscience, and forming your conscience properly in line with truth. Because if you have a properly formed conscience, you're not going to be scandalized by all the things going on in the world. And then to your point about the Mass and the Rosary and all of that stuff, also not knowing what those sacraments are all about and having this sort of just not a deep understanding of what they are and what they're ordered towards is also very dangerous, because the Mass is so beautiful. It gives you that nourishment to go out and carry your cross. Saying confession, it's all about that contrite heart, that broken spirit and contrite heart, and it's ordered towards you carrying your cross in your day-to-day life. And so, the church has all this explained. It's all very deep, but it's all about. I think that the laity, this is something that I came to a decent understanding of over the past couple of years, is I got to take responsibility for my faith. I got to know my faith. I got to train my intellect in line with the truth, and then carry my cross, and then having that understanding of the sacraments, giving me that nourishment to do that. But I think it's a good point about all that. And
but the acts themselves is another thing that needs to be pointed out. Doing the actions themselves means nothing without the right disposition. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that, I believe it's St. Teresa of Avila who says that a lot of people go to hell because they don't make good confessions. So first off, just going in the confessional and saying some words means nothing if you don't, at the end of saying, and amend my life, don't mean amend my life. And then if the Rosary, if you read The Secret of the Rosary by St. Louis de Montfort, there's a story he tells in there about three children who I think are siblings who are praying the Rosary, and Mary speaks to them and says that one of them is going to, I believe, if I remember correctly, she says one of them is going to spend a lot of time in purgatory because he's not really praying his Rosary like how he should. Like, he's not really meditating on the mysteries. Yeah. And so you have to really be in the prayer itself. It's not about just going through motions. And so with the Rosary, of course, there are distractions and all that, but actually praying the Rosary is meditating on the mysteries, because it's that meditation on the mysteries that's helping you conform yourself to Christ, helping you to know Him better. And it's like conforming to His ways. Like, this is how Jesus went through these things, and that's how I need to participate in life as well. And even in the Mass, it's like if you're just sitting there at Mass, I'm just here to receive the Eucharist, and there's nothing else here. If you're not actually taking in the readings, what are the readings saying? What is Jesus telling? What is the Church giving to me today to meditate on? If you're not actively participating in the Mass, if in the Latin Mass Missals, in my Latin Mass Missals, there's a quote from Pius X right there that says, "To truly partake in the Mass is to follow along with every word the priest says," and all the and not all the gestures, being you have to do the gestures themselves, but
being aware of
following along in every way, knowing what's going on, truly praying the Mass.
Yeah.
And so all these things, you have to have the proper disposition as well as the proper action. It's spirit and action.
That's what's really meant by that phrase, often misunderstood, active participation.
Oh, yes.
It's, people think this came out of the Second Vatican Council. No, it predates the Vatican Council. And it really just means, at the end of the day, that intentionality that we're talking about. Don't go through the motions. Don't be absent-minded when you're doing these things. Know what you're doing and know why you're doing it. And it goes back to what Trey was saying thing about the whole idea of taking responsibility for your faith. And when you do that, when you understand the faith, when you know not only what you're doing, but why you're doing it, you are going to build up within yourself, I think, this bulwark against stuff going on in the church. So when you see your supposed favorite bishop or your favorite priest or whatever it is who may get involved in a sex scandal, whatever crisis that you see in the church, and we know there are many of them. When you see that, it's not going to affect you much.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. So the not affecting you much, we're talking about scandal. That's ultimately what we're talking about. So scandal, of course, we have this, sort of secular word of it, and it's like it's a very shocking thing that a person might do. We talk about, there's a celebrity scandal, or whatever, and they did something, or there's a political scandal, and the president's son sold influence to China, allegedly. How could that possibly have happened? I don't know at all. But that's not what it means within the church. The thing with the church is scandal is something that may cause you to lose your faith. And so when we say, well, somebody is scandalized, it's meaning that they are at risk of losing their faith because of something terrible that has happened. Now, it's an interesting thing that this was said to me by my confessor, and it's very, very true, and I think he said it to a number of people because I've heard it from a number of people who've heard it from him, that the only people who get scandalized by scandalous things, by bad things happening in the church, are kind of the lukewarm, wishy-washy people in the middle. Those people who have no faith, those people who are, they don't care. They don't care that the bishop is embezzling. They don't care that the bishop is doing, some terrible thing. They don't care. Because it's like, I've got no faith, I've lost it. I'm not scandalized. I can't lose what I didn't have. Or maybe my faith is so sort of wishy-washy. It's just in this kind of, I turn up and I'm, nominally Catholic or what have you, but I've got no real faith. And then the people with strong faith, they are like, well, okay, I have strong faith and I have knowledge and I have this solid foundation, and I know that, well, men do bad things. To quote Terry Waite, who was the great hostage negotiator back when I was a kid, he was asked to explain the problem of original sin, and he said, people are no damn good. I don't know, can I say damn? I don't know, am I going to bleep on YouTube? But he said, people are no damn good. They're going to bleep it and they're going to think I said something worse than that. But that's ultimately what it is. People do bad things. Even the best person does bad things or fails to do things. So you understand that. It's the people in the middle who've got this kind of squishy, wishy-washy faith, and they don't really have the ability to either not care or to realize that, well, yes, I should care, but it doesn't damage my faith. And of course, this, to your point, when you say this is like my favorite bishop, and it doesn't matter who your favorite bishop is, there's a whole slew of these guys out there who say good things, and some of them are very, kind of like celebrity bishops, and they're often coming out and they're making these statements that are going beyond their diocese. Priests too, a lot of these priests are coming and making statements that go beyond their parish, beyond their diocese. They become, internet personalities, media personalities, and what have you. And they say these things, and it's like, okay, you're latching too much faith in this person, because even if they don't do anything that's horrifically scandalous, they're not getting involved in some awful, sinful behavior. I've seen bishops and priests being asked to opine on subjects. You have no competency in this. I've seen bishops and priests being asked to opine on the situation between Russia and Ukraine. And it's like, I assure you, you have no competency to weigh in on this, unless you are like, Father Vincent Capodanno of happy memory, and you actually served in a forward position. I don't think you really have a lot to say about, a political, thing. I mean, Cardinal Dulles, was not related to the other Dulles, who was the political guy. I mean, it's like you're not there to be able to weigh in on secular politics, on military things. But of course, they get asked, and suddenly that they do, and suddenly they're making these statements that are divisive and are, in many cases, just flat out wrong, and it's feeding in to their own egos. That these guys end up with a kind of inflated ego because, like, oh, well, everyone's asking me the question. Everyone must want to hear my answer. And it's like, yes, everyone does want to hear your answer, and they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're any type of celebrity, any type of personality nowadays, you think of the incidents at the Grammys or the Oscars, which no one watches anymore, and you have an actor or an actress standing up. You can't call them actresses anymore; they're all actors, right? Anyways, you have one of these people opining about world political views. It's like, who are you to say that? Are you to say Sean Penn? I don't care what you have to say.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it even happens on a small level to me. I can't remember what the question was, but I was asked one of these questions today via an email somebody had sent. And my response was, I do not know. Done. And I try very much to, because it's like, I have no competency whatsoever in this regard, and I do not wish to weigh, I do not know. And so there you go. And
it's a bit of humility during Pride Month. Right?
It's a bit of humility during Pride Month, but yeah, but you know what? It would be very easy for me. I get a lot of these questions that come in, and they're not, these great, huge, massive, profound things, but they're questions of which I don't know. And it's like, well, okay, I could go look it up, and read something, but ultimately then I'd just be like, yeah, okay, here, let me tell you something that I got from reading a couple articles on it, and it took me 10 minutes. I mean, at that point, I'm going to be like, here's the article yourself, mate, and find out, But ultimately, it's like, yeah, I don't know. But there is a real temptation because people will come along and do that, and I think it's very dangerous for these men.
Yeah, just because you're popular, you're not the expert in everything. And we see this a lot of times, too, in the Protestant world. So I think especially in the Protestant world. Yes, it infects Catholics with certain bishops and certain priests that we like. But it's even more so a temptation in the Protestant world to get super attached to your particular pastor because they have no hierarchy, right? They have no magisterium. They have no catechism to fall back on many times. So their relationship to God is literally, they make fun of Catholics for having our relationship of God through a priest, but they're doing the exact same thing to the nth degree when their pastor, they get so attached to this guy and then he moves to a different church or a scandal happens with him and then they totally lose their faith or the church splits and breaks apart because this faction is going with him and that faction is going with him. It's that splintering effect that is exemplary of this sort of pastor hero worship type of thing.
Yeah, but I just don't know in what means we could expect to not see what we're seeing. Because when you do have so many people who are especially suspect, so many priests in your parishes who, I grew up with some really bad priests in certain senses that were just like, dude, you have nothing to say, like you're completely uninspiring, like you don't do anything for the parish really, like, you just come here and do mass and it's about the only time I probably ever see you. And so there are these factions form because in this world where it's so easy to be great and so much is accessible to us, people have fallen so far. And so your person who back in the day may have just been average is all of a sudden elevated to like Superman status. And we have this, and we also have, just with the movies we have this superhero tendency of movies where you want to have these people who you think are saving the day, who you can look up to and all that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. When you put too much faith in them, it becomes bad, but you should be able to have people that you look up to. The priests and the religious should be holier than me. It should not be a question that the man that I'm going to in confession has spent a lot more time with Jesus than me when that's kind of his job.
Well, two things on that. What you said about the having good examples around you. This is something Simon and I talked about on Hardline. I think
which is
Monday.
coming out. Yeah, well, we shot it earlier this week, but yeah, it's coming out this week, next week. I can't remember.
But it's a perfect segue into, and this is a little bit of a side note, but I think it's a good point. A lot of the guys over in Italy, they're 20, 25, 30, however.
You were, just because people don't necessarily know, you were out in Italy helping to coach and also playing football out there, and that's American football, not like Italian soccer.
That's right. That's right. Real football.
Real football.
But I'm on the team, and I'm obviously trying to get to know the guys, and none of them practice the faith. A lot of them told me that they don't believe in God. They believe in science instead, which doesn't make any sense because science proves God. But the more that I picked their brains, the more that I realized they didn't have any examples around them. A lot of them, like here in America, you come from broken homes. They don't have any examples of holiness around them. There's just nothing. like here in America as over there. I don't speak Italian, so I didn't know exactly what they were saying, but you could just kind of see a lot of the priests had that same sort of watered down mentality. You don't need to hear it; you can just kind of see it. And but that's their example. That's their example of a Catholic man. And
it's not very inspiring.
Sure, no, not at all. And so, yeah, again, they need to take responsibility for their faith, and they need to assent to truth themselves. But it makes it harder when you don't have the example around you. And I think something that's inspiring, not just to them, to anybody, with your point about holiness. Our baptismal vocation, the highest vocation we have, is the call to holiness. And John Harden, servant of God John Harden, talked a lot about this. The call to holiness, and that's something for you, that's something for the priest, that's something for the religious, the bishop, the pope, everybody, and that's where all the vocations stem from, is that baptismal vocation, that call to holiness that everybody's called to. We just had the feast of Jose Maria Escriva, who put so much emphasis on the laity assenting to that vocation, understanding that vocation, and I just think that's an it's something that's inspiring for somebody who doesn't have the faith, or somebody who is outside the faith, or whatever it may be. It's like, no, you've got a call to holiness. You have a vocation. You've got a mission in life to bring about God's kingdom, and that's inspiring. So obviously, these guys they didn't have any of that around them. People here in America don't have much of that either. So puts a little bit more.
I think you'd hear. I mean, if Dave Gordon was here, I think I'll say it for him that this was about the crisis of fatherhood. It's the fatherlessness crisis. I mean, obviously there's a statistic that Brad is common. We are like totally at second string here, aren't we? Really, it's like we've got no Dave Gordon, we've got no Brad, there's no Christine. We haven't seen.
You're stuck with the two redheads.
That's it. I'm stuck here with this. But Brad is often talking about this statistic that if the father practices the Catholic faith, the children invariably keep the Catholic faith. If the father doesn't practice the faith, it doesn't matter really what the mother does, the children fall away. That fatherhood is incredibly important to children of both sexes, men, boys and girls, but particularly I think to sons. Obviously you, with your training, obviously these football players out there, I think probably they were all boys, because Italy hasn't become that woke yet that they've decided to put.
They did have a girls on the flag football team, which was a little bit odd. That was like becoming a big thing over there, so that was a little weird. But
wow, look, can we not do that? I mean, just
let's not.
Women,
right?
Girls sports, fine. I'm down with that. That's great, not a problem. I think girls in American football, it's just like it's a brutal. I've played it. It is a brutal game, and we should keep the fairer sex out of that.
I had to coach I coached high school football for 4 years, and the first year I coached, there was I don't know how she got on the team, but there was a girl on the team, and she was the kicker and like the third string cornerback. It was always really weird. I coached corners and receivers, and she was always in the back of the line. Basically didn't do anything, but I didn't know how to coach her. I was just like, maybe I should just tell you to go home is what it's kind of the right thing to do was. But then I wouldn't,
because you think, this is completely tangential to this discussion, but I think it's fascinating. Obviously, the kicker, you see the kicker, and he goes up and he kicks off initially and he takes the field goals and this sort of stuff. But there are times when something goes wrong and he gets absolutely creamed. And obviously the kicker, they're usually like these tall, kind of lanky guys. And obviously, the forwards within the American football teams. I mean, these guys are like the size of a... There was the guy when I was growing up, and his name was The Fridge. He was known, was it Fred Perry, the refrigerator? He was known as The Fridge because he was the size of a fridge. And that was back in the days when fridges were really big. And it's like, dude, that guy hits like a kicker. He's going home, like, not in a casket. He's going home in multiple small boxes.
Yeah, and that, to me, that exemplifies it in all these different things, the fatherlessness crisis. Because it's like your spiritual fathers, all these different ways you can be a father. And it's like a coach is in a sense like a father-ish type figure to a team.
There's paternalism there.
So what you're doing is you're setting your son's team, whatever, up to win, and you're setting them up to be in good positions and all. And especially like you're not protecting that girl as a woman. That's very anti-father. You're not protecting her. You're also not giving your team the best chance to win, because show me any girl who can play cornerback against a receiver. That's ridiculous.
This is so wrong, but I'm going to say it anyways. The she ended up getting in at the last game. She never came in. She got in, I remember vividly, the last series of the last game of the season. Our head coach threw her in, and she was playing corner. And I'm not kidding. She was playing about 10 yards off, and we just wanted to, she's out there. I just wanted her to get through the play. And the receiver, I don't know if he knew it was a girl or not, he came off the ball, and it was a run play, and he just tossed her. She's got, she was okay and everything, but he just tossed her, and it's like, oh, get back over here. But no, to Nick's point, what father, and I'm probably a little bit culpable too for just, being there and letting it happen. I should have told her to go home. But to your point, what father, who lets that happen? You know, why would you let her out there to get thrown around by a bunch of dudes? And
her experience of athletics at that point is, I don't know what. Well, I know what hit her, a receiver hit her, but I don't know what hits her in her head when she sees this. And okay, so I went out there and I did everything that I could, and I left it all on the field along with my dignity. Yeah. And it's okay, so is she gonna not ever want to participate in athletics again? That she's not necessarily. Okay, fine. You stepped into what is a brutal, very physical strength. It's not like golf.
It doesn't make any sense to begin with, because the purpose of sport, it's the training and the virtues. That's what the sport is for. It's not an end in and of itself. It's to help human beings become better human beings. And that breaks down, like we were talking about, with boys, masculinity. You play a sport that's supposed to help you become more manly. That's supposed to help you become more of a man and eventually become a better Christian man. Same thing with girls. So girls who are playing these sports that are just feeding into their aggression, their competitiveness, their, playing brutalizing sports. How is that helping you become a better woman? How is it helping you become more feminine? That's not helping you become a better Christian woman, not one bit. So it doesn't make any sense to begin with.
Then you apply all that to the church, and it's the same fatherless thing, because faith comes through hearing. You need these adequate preachers who know Jesus to disseminate the faith. And so now you have these parishes where people are coming up and they're not being told anything through a homily. You're probably not celebrating Mass very reverently. You probably don't have these different ministries in your parish that are helping people to either do acts of service or to grow closer in the faith. And so that's what you have whenever you have all that. So it's easy to become attached to these few priests or bishops.
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting on that. So you talk about this issue of fatherlessness, and we talk about the fathers being kind of taken away, or fathers being revealed as not being fathers. This happens a lot, and I say a lot, it's not certainly a majority, but it's happened far more times than it should happen. The number of times it should happen is zero. It's happened a lot of times, far too many times, in the trad community, where a very perceived as holy traditionalist priest is found to be engaged in some nefarious behavior, or he's got feet of clay, for want of a better word. The classic one, the most recent one that we sat here and discussed, Father Jackson. So Father Jackson, if you remember, Father Jackson was an FSSP priest, and he was accused of accessing inappropriate materials on the internet. We all know what kind of inappropriate materials, but if I say the actual words, YouTube will ban us. Thank you, YouTube. Really, you're doing a great job keeping the world safe.
Child sexual abuse material.
Child sexual abuse material. Thank you very much. Anyway, so Father Jackson was accused of accessing this stuff, and everyone within his parish suddenly leapt to his defense. And there was this constant thing. We covered the story. We were called every name under the sun. Christine was absolutely vilified because she was taking the lead on the story. He was arrested. He was charged. He was on, I think, out on parole or whatever, out on bail. While out on bail, he again accessed the inappropriate materials that he should not have accessed. He then has now pled guilty to this particular charge. I don't know if he's been sentenced yet. The reaction from multiple people in his parish and within the wider trad community was despair and being utterly scandalized. It's like, I can't go to the Mass anymore because of this. I had placed all my faith in this man. And it's like, no, that's the thing. It's like this father he is just a man. He is not Jesus Christ. He is not a God. He is not flawless. And you know what? It's very possible that these people are going to be engaging in this kind of behavior. Any priest could be doing it. Any man could be engaging in some sort of awful behavior, even if not that kind of disgusting depravity. But people could be cheating on their taxes. People could be violent. People could be drunkards. You know, there's all these things. And the moment you put too much faith in one of these people, you risk having that faith destroyed, because it's, what is the foundation of your faith? Is the foundation of your faith in Jesus Christ, the God-man, who is perfect and who will never let you down? You know? Or is it in some dude, and it's like, he is but a dude, my dudes.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to love the person properly, adequately, because it's neither too little or too much. There's no attachment we should have to anything in the world. We're supposed to be completely attached to Jesus. That's it. But I mean, the second commandment is to love your neighbor. And so to love him means never to put him in front of God. It means to love him with a detached love, which a lot of the saints talk about. So it is really to will his good, to be there for him, to do all these things, but it can never supersede the true bonds of charity, because we're called to love even individual people in our lives to different extents, in different ways. It's like, even though I have love for someone like Simon as a brother, I should not spend as much time focused on Simon as I should with my family or something like that. I love them both, but I'm not called to love them in the same way, to the same extent and all. And so those boundaries, those relationships need to be seen in the proper light, and it all comes from having to be detached from everything and to truly love it for the sake of God and not for its own sake.
For its own sake, yeah.
Yeah. Your pastors will never be God. You know, despite what Ghostbusters may tell you, when someone asks if you're a God, you say no. You don't say yes. And I had a really good Protestant pastor friend back in the day when I was just coming back to the faith, and he acknowledged this. Actually, he told me that he's like, look, he's like, I could let you down. He's like, you might find out some bad stuff about me one day. I never did. I'm not saying this guy did, but he warned me. He's like, you could find out some bad stuff about me. I will let you down, but God never will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, so I think we've had a good discussion today. I know we went off on a sports tangent there.
I apologize for that.
No, it was me.
That's 100% my fault.
It related.
You fed into it. Nick fed into it too.
We're all guilty. We all let you down. That's what we did.
Drop the ball. Is that appropriate?
That's fine.
That is fine. That is fine. Yeah, people at home can't see, but like out there behind the cameras, we have our producer walking around. We've got various production staff and so forth, and we've got Dave who comes around and he holds up a sign saying "back on topic," and we usually ignore it. Anyway, so it's Friday. It's Friday. What are you going to do? Anyway, thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now, please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Eve. A te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte. Et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, over the weekend, we have other shows coming out. We got Mic'd Up that Trey produces with Dave Gordon. We've got Hardline coming out as well. And don't forget, on Monday, there will be another Membership Mondays. It will be live with Michael Voris, and you will be able to listen to him. And if you are a premium subscriber, you can ask questions in the chat, and he may answer them. Excitement. Anyway, from all of us here at Church Militant, may God bless you.